Okay, the recorder's on. You're ready. You can do this.
This is Laura Oldaney from Rich and Resilient Living, and you are listening to Vroom, Vroom, Veer with Jeff Smith, reminding you to remember that wealth is far more than money.
Perfect. Yes, it is. It's way more than money. Yes. Because otherwise we wouldn't say wealth. We would say just rich, because that's boring. Anyway, perfect. All right, I'm going to hit stop. I'll be right back.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Michaelbrent Collings. Thank you so much for being on Vroom Vroom Veer and welcome to the show. How's it going?
It's going awesome. It's going a little better because we finally managed to, make technology work.
Yay. Yay. Look at us. We're almost old people and we can use computers. Wow.
Well, I was like sitting there with my Etch-a-Sketch, just shaking it and going, this thing won't load. But then, my kid came in and they're like, Dad, move over. Ah, okay. Here's the colorful one is the computer.
Gotcha. Yeah, I miss those little knobs, man. They were the best. So you are at bestsellerlife.com, not bettersellerlife.com, bestsellerlife.com. So what are you most excited about in your business, in your life today?
Oh, in my business and in my life, I'm just excited to be launching it. I'm an author and my wife and I share computers. So she's always getting ads for me, like, Viagra and stuff like that. And I'm getting ads for her, ditch your husband, things like that. And she kept getting like all these how to publish and make $1 billion kind of things, which are a crock of crap. So I was complaining about people ripping off authors. And she's like, well, you actually do this successfully. You should make a course. And that's what I did. So bestsellerlife.com is super awesome. It's got like dozens of hours of step-by-step video explanations. And it's all me too. It's not like some rando person that I pawned it off to. I'm like, here, Jimmy, you figure out Facebook. It's like somebody who's actually been doing it. And I don't teach it for a living because that's the other thing is like you go to a lot of these and they're like, I'm so good at teaching. And you look at their books on Amazon, it's like 1 review, 6 sales, all of them to the author's mom kind of thing. So,
yeah.
I'm just stoked that that's up and running and I've got books constantly coming out. I've got a big release coming out in early 2024 and I'm going to be on tour with that for 6 weeks. And
wow,
my wife was terrified, but also probably happy to have me gone.
Well, that's fun. It sounds like you're having a good time.
Yeah, we're always, life is what you make of it. And it sounds really trite. And I'm not saying that some people you're like, cause I always make it good. No, my life sucks a lot of the time, but right now we're having a good time. So let's lean into that.
No, one of my, this is going to be a bit of a downer. Not really. No, not really. But like, one of my guests said something like that. Like there's this weird expectation that people have that they should be happy all the time.
Oh my gosh.
And
it's impossible.
I'm glad she burst that bubble. And I was pretty old when she explained that to me. No. You shouldn't actually be ecstatically, gleefully happy all the time. That would be fucking weird.
Right. And, you do meet people like that and you're like, this guy's just high constantly. Nobody defaults like, oh, that person's really well adjusted. You're like, there's something wrong with that dude. Like if you see somebody just walking down the street smiling and nodding at everybody, like, I don't know, I lived in South America for a while and that was kind of normal down there. But like up in the US and in, white people zones, it's like just creepy.
You mean people outside the United States are happy? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, I don't know about happy, but they're nicer.
They smile more.
Yeah, they do. For real. I went from Los Angeles to this little town of 5,000 people in South America. And for the first 2 months, people are smiling and waving. And I'm just like reflexively checking my wallet. Being like, they're going to steal something. This is like the advanced crew from the gang or something. And then I came home after 2 years and I'm walking down like, doing the same thing in LA, smiling and waving.
Yeah.
And all I could think was like, white people suck, because we don't do that to each other.
Yes. Well, I'm learning slowly that like a place like LA, especially like all of LA, all of Southern California, fucking weird.
Oh, seventh circle of hell. I
Fucking weird.
moved from Los Angeles to Idaho, and I got so many people being like, why would you move from Los Angeles, the bustling metropolis, to cow country and potatoes in Idaho? And I was just like, that question shows you've never been to LA. It's pretty obvious if you spend more than a couple days there.
And when, I don't know why, I think it was, so I lived like in like part of LA County, like Torrance, South Bay area, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's,
yeah.
you know, still LA, right?
Technically.
Technically LA. But those LA people, they have nothing to do with the South Bay. It's like you may as well be on another planet. But
yeah, it's just a herpes and leprosy colony.
pretty much. and it goes like, if you're South Bay, then you just do South Bay stuff, right? You Hermosa, Redondo, right? You don't want to know anything about the valley. Fuck those valley people.
Pretty much.
But I remember like going on one of those tour buses with friends that coming visiting from out of town. And we went to like, what's the big shopping thing? Like Rodeo Drive, right?
Yeah.
Beverly Hills.
That's a creepy place.
That is, if you like get out and walk around the shops, you know, like Louis Vuitton and all the brands, right? And everybody walking around there, that is the closest place to the Matrix I've ever been on planet Earth.
Oh, but it's like if the Matrix was programmed by the Stepford Wives, because like I remember I worked at Fox Studios for a while on a production company there.
Wow.
And I did a good job for them. So my last day, they took me out to lunch on Rodeo Drive, and I just looked around at all the cautionary tales of plastic surgery catching up to you. Like that was like 80%. 20% I was going, oh, you guys were great. Thanks for letting me work with you. It was a real wonderful experience. And 80% was like, dude, I am never getting a nose job. Like, I ain't pretty. I have a face made for typing with my face, but it is better than the train wreck that happens 30, 40 years after you start messing with stuff.
It's like, how do I look? You look good.
Yeah.
What are you going to say?
Is desperate an adjective?
Right. Anyway, this is Vroom Vroom Veer. We have to start doing the show now. Let's stop screwing around. Okay, so let's go back in time and talk about Michael. So I'm going to start calling you MBC, right?
Nice.
Okay, so talk about MBC when he was growing up. Where did you grow up?
I grew up kind of all over for the first 8 years. My dad was a teacher, so we were, poor. And he finally landed a dream job. He worked for Pepperdine University, and he ended up being the head of their creative writing department. So we kind of put down roots in Thousand Oaks, California. And I had no friends and no fun for the first couple of years there. And, people say that all the time, and they're like, but he had friends. She had friends. I had one friend, and that was the kid who hit me less than everybody else kind of thing. And it was mostly my fault. Okay. It was mostly my fault. Like, it wasn't where I was kind of a jerk. I was very smart and I was very small. And those two things create this Napoleon complex without any of the power behind it, So I was just annoying to everybody. And I finally went to my mom, who's like the nicest person. And I'm 11 or 12 years old. I'm like tired of not having friends. And I said, teach me, sensei. And she literally like teaches me how to be friendly. So life started taking off a little better in middle school and high school. And, I had like a much more normal experience at that point, but it was kind of an uphill struggle for the first couple of years. And the saving grace it was really books and stories. It was nice. My dad, he's a creative writing director. So he had a library of tens of thousands of books in our home. And he ordered them by kind of age appropriateness. So he's like, the less terrifying books are down here and the, heftier ones are up here. And if you can reach it, son, you can read it, I went and got a stepladder, went to like the fifth shelf up and started reading Stephen King, which was kind of everywhere in our house because my dad was the world expert on Stephen King for about 20 years. Not speaking hyperbole, like actually the world expert on Stephen King. So I grew up in a house full of love, but also full of screaming and typing.
So now this is maybe the first person, you may be the first person I've ever talked to, maybe in my life, that kind of gave me an idea, like Have you ever met somebody that is just like a dick, right? Like an asshole, right? The question hasn't come out yet, and you.
I'm so glad.
And you think like to yourself, who gave them permission to be a dick or an asshole? Like, was there like a graduation ceremony when he was 5 and it says, you are now a dick? Congratulations. Right. I just didn't know where it came from. And then you just say, okay, well, you're small and you're smart. That kind of leads you to be like kind of a dick. And I was like, okay.
Oh, 100%.
So you had to like learn how to be nice. That was the first time I ever heard that. It's interesting.
Well, I'm deeply introverted. There's people who are born with that like outgoing spirit and they can go to any party and just have fun. And I'm the guy who goes to a party, faces the wall and just chews my fingernails until my wrist bones are showing. And so, you put that social maladjustment into, the pressure of school, just in general, figuring yourself out. And it's a recipe for disaster. And I was just lucky that I found a way to kind of be jerky instead of just implode, and grow up to be the guy who everyone's like, he was so quiet the day after he's gunned down 20 people or something. So it worked out okay. But yeah, I'll take full responsibility for not having friends as a kid.
Understood. That's great. But, hey, good on you for seeking out advice. So,
Oh, yeah.
11-year-old Michaelbrent went and asked mommy how to be nice. And it worked out.
And it worked. Yeah. Seek a mentor. Always good.
The other thing that you just said, you said something interesting there. Introvert. I think I might closetly be an introvert, which makes no sense because I've always considered myself kind of extroverted. Like, but I heard myself say something the other day. Like, I went to podcast movement way back when, like 2014, 2015, something like that.
Right.
And all of those people like walking up to me and giving me their card and pitching me. I was, get away from me.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
It's fucking exhausting,
Yeah.
So maybe I'm an introvert sometimes, or maybe it's an aversion to pitches.
No, you are probably, because like a lot of people mistake introvert for someone who can't speak to other people. And it's not like an ability or a capacity thing. The best definition I ever heard was you're an introvert or you're an extrovert if social interaction energizes you.
Right.
Yeah. And it costs me, definitely. Like people see me on shows and stuff, and I'm very open about my mental health issues because I have some pretty serious ones, and they'll get on and immediately be like, oh, he's not really that because he doesn't act like that. I'm like, well, you diagnosed me in 20 minutes on YouTube. Congratulations.
Right.
But one of the big ones is like, there's no way he's an introvert. And I go, well, you don't see me after a Comic-Con, like where I've been interacting with people for 3 days and signing autographs and stuff. And then I come home and I literally have a bed in the closet where I just sit for several days and my family doesn't bother me because I'm like dealing with the come down kind of thing.
Okay.
Or even after these, like, I try and schedule a podcast later in the day because I am not as effective after it's over.
Wow. Okay. So thank you. I don't think then I'm an introvert. I will say like those big events with a gajillion people, still exhausting. Right.
Well, the meat river is hard to swim through.
Yeah. Like I don't want to go to Comic-Con. When a friend of mine described Comic-Con is like this ocean of people that you have to navigate and then get to your thing and stay there and then go out into the ocean again. And it takes you hours to get from one thing to the next thing. I was like, no, I don't ever want to do that ever. That's too many people.
Yeah, it's like I'm a singles bar with more outfits.
Way better outfits too.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, all right. So we got through childhood a little bit.
Finally.
Yes. So I know you went to college because you were a lawyer. So were you always going to be a lawyer, or how did that happen?
I don't know if I was always going to be a lawyer, but like, I liked to write and I liked to tell stories and do creative stuff, but I did not want to be the stereotypical 40-year-old rock star living in his mom's basement, like inviting women over, being all, any day, baby, I'm going to make it big. Like I wanted to have a family, and I wanted to have, I knew I wanted a wife and kids and stuff, and I wanted to provide for them. So I was like, well, I've been told, probably during my jerky phase, that I argue well, so I'll be a lawyer. So I did that as like my grown-up job so that I could avoid the creative lifestyle.
Okay. All right.
And it didn't work.
Right. Probably that introvert thing sort of like came around.
Well, what happened with the law job was a combination of a couple of things. One, the mental health problems that I alluded to, they rose into the fore. And at the same time, probably even bigger was my wife got really, really sick. So I went from like a full-time partner at a law firm, and they work these crazy hours and you always have to be there and stuff. I went to turned into a part-time lawyer because I'm taking care of my wife. And she's better now, but the partners invited me into a meeting and very kindly invited me to divest myself of my shares and leave the partnership. And you can't really be like, no, I'm going to stay. And like, that's just talk about an intentionally toxic work environment. So I left, and like I say, my wife had been sick. I'm sick. We've got medical bills piling up, and it's right around when the economy crashed, and everybody's like, we don't really like lawyers, so we're definitely not hiring lawyers right now. Just aside from the fact that we don't need them, they're unpleasant and stuff. So I'm literally just sitting there jobless. I'm trying to get a job as a normal, adult, 8 hours a day, and nothing's working. So I start telling stories at night because it's something I've been decent at, and I was lucky enough to make that into my new career.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, still purchasing my soul back on an installment plan, though.
You're right. They take those deals seriously, especially when you scrawl them in blood. Yeah,
100%. You don't get your diploma from law school until you hand that thing over in a box.
At a crossroads with blood and one pinky finger, I think is what I heard at some point.
Oh yeah, and I went to USC, so I not only had to bring a dead cat, it had to be a dead expensive cat.
Oh, right. Recently shampooed. Well, okay. Well, I'm glad things worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do, if you keep it, I found out the secret to immortality. I determined, because I love movies and watching them, I realized the secret to immortality, because every time somebody dies, they do the same thing. They have their like important moment, and then they go, oh.
Right.
And they exhale, and they forget to inhale after that. So I've just arranged so people are always around me, and every time I get that look and I make that sound, someone goes, breathe in, and I just keep going. And if you keep breathing in long enough because someone's shouting at you to do it and encouraging you,
maybe
the troubles, the troubles recede. You get new ones, but like very few of your problems are permanent.
Amen. I went through, and this is not new, so this has been covered on this podcast and other podcasts. In my 20s, I went through depression and suicide attempts. So don't want to get into it, but I've been there, and it's definitely like, I was never diagnosed because I was trying to avoid telling the world. Right.
Yeah.
But like, you've been there, so I'm not telling you anything, but it's like when people hear about it, I'm fine now. Right. But then, this is like when I was like 92, I guess, right? 91, 92. Like when people weren't around, all I would do was cry and then want to like lay down on a couch. Right. And to be honest with you, it was the suicide attempts that like failed that got me off of that. Right. Strangely enough. Right. So like I like try to die, wake up the next day and go, crap, I'm not dead. Now I got to go to work. And because of my attempt methodology, that next day was really a bad day. I was really sick.
That's so weird. You would think that after, trying to off yourself, you'd just wake up with bluebirds on your shoulder, lifting you to work. Oh my gosh.
As it turns out, not the case. Yes. Yeah.
No.
But that got me off of, God, I suck to, well, that didn't work. Fuck it.
I'm not even good at this. I'm going to go find something else to do.
Yeah, kind of. So like years later, I actually, figured some stuff out, but at least I was off of that spot.
Good.
So,
Good.
okay.
I will say interjecting is like and I make jokes about it because I do have I have major depressive disorder, suicidal tendencies, and psychotic breaks. So like when I say like I'm crazy, I'm making good-natured fun of myself, and it's like I'm allowed to.
Of course.
So to any other crazy people out there, make sure you don't get that far. That's one of the things I always try and say is just like reach out.
Yeah, get help.
Yeah, there's a stigma when you hide it, but the more you're just like, hey, I'm crazy, people go, that's cool, let's talk about it. And it becomes, it becomes a thing that people are interested in. So you're the life of the party about the time you try to off yourself. Right. And then, it just fades into the background and people are aware of it, but can cope with it. If you're just hiding it and you don't show up to work because you're having a crazy day, it's the end of the world for folks. But if you've prepped them like, hey, some days I just can't get out of bed and we're like thumb sucking, they're more aware of it and able to kind of like roll with it. So you're better off talking to people.
Totally. Yeah. Okay. So let's get off boring, not boring, but like downer stuff, downer stuff, right? Not boring, good stuff. Everybody learn Michael, Brent, and Jeff Smith went through some shit. We're okay now. That's the thrust of that portion of the show. Okay.
At least for today.
So, so you are now no longer a lawyer. No. And then, so next you start telling stories. So how do you take screwing around in your house as a not lawyer to, making a living? Let's get into that. How'd that happen?
Well, so it started before I ended being a lawyer. So I married my wife, and she's like far above my station, and she marries this nice, stable law guy, And then a couple years into it, I'm like, hey, remember when I mentioned that I kind of like to write? And she goes, yeah. And I say, well, I really like to write. And I don't want to quit my job or anything, but I'd like to make some money writing too. That would be neat. So for about a decade, it would be like wake up at 5 or 5:30, go to work, come back at 6, play with the kids, tuck everybody into bed. And at 10 o'clock, I'd write, and I'd write from 10 until 1 or 2.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And people are like, how'd you manage that? I'm like, the answer is very easy. I was cranky all the time, and my wife put up with a lot. And so luckily I had already started the ball rolling when the law stuff fell apart. So literally that same year I sold 2 screenplays. And I had also started querying publishers and agents and managers and stuff like that, the usual route for I want to be famous as a writer.
Yeah.
And I have 2 4-inch binders of single sheets of rejections.
Keep all of those. They're important.
Oh, yeah. They're great because some of them are like, no, thanks. It was close, but no, thanks. And some of them were like, please set fire to yourself so this never happens again. Like there was a real range.
Wow.
Yeah. Some of them were not nice, but I had a friend who was like, well, have you heard about this Kindle thing? And I was like, oh, is that like a new Etch-a-Sketch, like you and I went over?
Right.
And he explained what it was. And I was like, well, my book won't hurt anybody, So I just put it up there. And like the first month I was floored because I sold 6 copies. And I'm pretty sure all of them were to my mom. I'm pretty sure she set up 6 Amazon accounts, bought 6 copies of that book.
Bless her.
And that was my oh, for sure. That was my big success though,
Yeah, but boy, that's awesome. That first money that you get from something creative, it's like, totally. They love me. They really,
I was like, I'm going to cash this 25-cent check and buy a handful of Skittles at a candy machine and feel like a king among men.
Yes.
And so all that was kind of rolling, and we went through this really lean, terrible period. I ended up in my parents' basement, the one place I'd wanted to avoid, with a family because, we've lost everything and we're kind of rebuilding. And I was still trying to get like a regular grown-up job, but at the same time, it's not happening. So I keep telling these stories, and I just gradually built not just a readership, but like a system, a repeatable system that I could do over and over and over again, and make a pretty good living.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that you turned into a course just recently.
Yeah. Because again, there's just so many shysters out there. I'm just amazed. You turn on the internet any point, anytime, and someone's like, I will teach you how to be a millionaire in this job. And I'm like, look, if you are so good at that job, you are either the best in the world, which is why you have time for this, or you're full of crap. And it's usually full of crap. There's somebody who's like taking. It's so terrible, and it's so shilly, like, hey, there's just this like high pressure sales pitch, and it's like, I just kind of want to be like, I've done okay with this, and I'm not going to promise you're a millionaire, because nobody can promise that, but I'll tell you what I did, and maybe you can make it work. There's principles that work. And so that's been a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work, because I'm balancing business head and creative head and dad head and husband head and all these different jobs that we do day to day. And everyone has those different hats, but I do find in a creative field, it is a lot bigger of a chasm,
Yeah.
You if you're working your 9 to 5, you come home and it's like, Daddy's home, and I work my 6 to whenever. I walk out and I'm kind of in a daze and like, whoa, Dad's thinking of a story. Don't talk to him. He won't be coherent, So my family has to like put up with this sort of skipping stone across the essences of life sometimes.
Wow. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I learned that lesson, that whole like, if you're looking for answers in your life at 2 a.m. while you're in your undies watching infomercials on shitty TV,
totally,
you're not going to find it. But you will.
No, you find people who prey on the desperate 2 a.m. crowd. That's right. What you find.
That's right. So what I found, now, I don't want to take away anything from anybody selling anything that might make somebody's, if you can afford any course that's going to make your life better, buy it, because, for sure. Right.
Why reinvent the wheel?
Exactly. The thing that actually ended up changing my life was when I found this guy, Mr. Money Mustache. He talks about, okay, so you are aware. Okay, good.
I've heard of.
Yeah. So this guy will like tell you exactly what to do in pretty good detail and not charge a dime. Now, if you want to go pay him because you want to hang out with him or something, you can. There are opportunities to give him money, but you really don't have to. He's the guy that says, oh, this is what I did. Here's how to do it. Have a nice life. Right. And the key is free. Which is amazing.
And, yeah. That's so cool to be able to do. And, it is such a rough gig out there learning anything nowadays, because like all the information's available and it's all gettable. But it was like when I was a kid, the difficulty was finding it, going to a library, ordering books, having to buy things, there was you couldn't just get it all at your fingertips,
Right.
And now the problem is, well, I have the entire ocean of knowledge, but it's turned from a desert looking for water to trying to find buried treasure at the bottom of the Marianas Trench sometimes. It's totally. Like, how do we filter through all the unnecessary stuff, all of the stuff that's not relevant, not germane, just not true, because we know the internet preys on, people who have a fundamental problem with truth. And all of us are in that boat sometimes, all of us hold very hard and dear to the things we believe that are least accurate sometimes.
Right.
So it's a weird echo chamber. It's an echo chamber inside of one of those, weird mirror places at the amusement park. So it's like, it's nothing but
distorted
distortion.
Images. Yes.
Everything, everything,
Right.
And you're like sitting there making fun of crap and you don't realize it's your own reflection. Cause I noticed that, the people who yell the loudest, the thing they yell loudest about is rude people. It's so funny watching a comment like somebody comes out just guns blazing and screaming and yelling, and someone's all like, "You're an a-hole," and they're like, "Whoa, no need to be rude."
That's great. I try to avoid the comment section altogether. Like I just turn off comments on my blog that is this podcast, because like, sure, if you love me, that's okay. Just love me from afar. I don't need to know.
Yeah. I heard a comedian, he's like, the best time to have been a public figure was the 80s, because there was like television. There was a way to reach a mass audience, but there was no way for the mass audience to reach you.
So true.
Yeah. It's like, I'm just trying to write a book and have fun. I'm like trying not to hurt people and do the right thing. And you can wake up and open the email and it's like, "Oh, I love your books." And then the next one's like, "You look like an idiot. Just want to let you know." Oh,
right.
Well,
I know where you live.
What is your life like?
I know where you live.
What is your life like?
And I'm coming to see you.
Yeah. Well, that is the thing, is like, you want to be careful making fun of horror writers. My son had some issues with because for those I didn't get into it, but I write everything, but I'm best known for horror. So
Right.
my son's at high school and he was having an issue with a kid, not a major thing, but like one of those little simmering kind of beefs. And I finally took him aside and I said, next time this kid bugs you, I want you to just look at him and say, hey, we can get into this, but I want you to know my dad will get involved. And all he does is sit and think of ways to kill people for 8 hours a day. That's his job.
Wow. Effective and scary.
Right? Just be careful. You never know who you're messing with. No, he laughed. He didn't. That was more for my son. I would never I hope he would never do something like that. You don't want
That's
to
funny.
torment some other random twit just because he's having a bad day too. But it's like funny. People are out there screaming and yelling. I'm like, you don't know. This guy could be a hired hitman who was just, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to do a podcast because I'm tired of the hitman life. I'm going to talk about different kinds of spaghetti. And the first troll comes up and is like, you're an idiot. You don't know spaghetti. And that guy wakes up dead the next day because he didn't know the podcast guy was a hitman. Like, you just don't know. I feel like we're taking our life in our hands.
True. That's true. I remember, this is just a total tangent, but like that, what you just said. So I was doing an IT temp job in Inglewood. Okay. So Inglewood, not one of the better neighborhoods of the greater LA area. Right.
Right.
And I kind of was going a little too fast next to the kids crossing the crosswalk, next to the elementary school. Mm-hmm. And the teacher in the crosswalk, if looks could kill, right? to me, right? And it's me, right? So I'm going to be like, oops, mea culpa. I'm sorry, right?
Right.
And
I'm so sorry.
Right. As I'm driving away, I'm like, I wouldn't be doing that. Because she didn't know it was me, right?
Yeah.
That could have been dangerous for her. But, who knows?
Yeah, you can tell looking at people. I remember there was a guy I went to church with, and he was this frumpy, dowdy chubster kind of thing. And he got into it with a kid, like I was there. It wasn't a church kid. It was just like on the street. And this kid punched him in the stomach and broke his wrist. And the guy just kind of like very matter-of-factly put the kid on the ground. And I went and tell my parents about that. Oh, that's so-and-so. He's a Navy SEAL. That kid should never have done that, And I'm like, I thought he was just, fat, chubby guy at church guy, You just don't know.
Right. Yeah. If you listen to the Navy SEAL people talk long enough, they get to that where they get into the training part where they make you into the gray man.
Pretty much. But the thing is, the gray man doesn't look like Ryan Gosling. It looks like a normal guy, especially after he's retired for 8 or 9 years.
That's what the gray man is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
That's what the gray man is supposed to look like.
Oh, that would be awesome. I would love to see a middle-aged balding guy in a minivan, and that's like the most dangerous person in the world.
Yeah. They tried to do that with that movie Nobody. Right. They tried to do it, but the actor, not really a nobody.
Well, and that's the thing too. It's like, we're going to call this the ugly girl. Why? Because she has glasses. But that way, when she takes them off, she's beautiful. And you're like, this chick's already gorgeous.
She's gorgeous.
Yeah. Hollywood is so messed up.
Yeah. So let's talk about more books. Because
cool.
Let's talk about so I know you're known for horror. And I get that. So you mentioned Stephen King. I was really into Dark Tower series. I thought that was some of the best shit ever right up until the end when he wrote himself into the end. But the whole, all the books were really great. And I tried to read his horror stuff. Needful Things, I got halfway in and had to quit. I was like, okay, I don't know what this is, but it's not what I got in the Dark Tower.
I don't get it. Right.
I don't get it. Yeah.
Very true.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about some of the other stuff that you do outside of horror.
Well, like I say, I kind of write, the way I usually do it is I'll write a scary book and then I'll write a not scary book, pretty much. The scary book is kind of my bread and butter, and then I'll do another thing. And I'm lucky enough I have fans that kind of follow me wherever. And then like, I've been in indie forever because like I say, I had that big, thick set of binders full of rejections. But now I'm a hybrid author because I signed a publishing contract with a national publishing house. So they're sending me on a big book tour next year for 6 weeks. And that's a middle grade fantasy. So like, I'm just all over the place. I mean, like everything, literally every single genre except erotica, I have written something, and I've done romance, fantasy, sci-fi, thriller, mystery, humor, everything.
Wow.
Because as much as I like horror and I understand it as a home base, probably because my dad was so deeply involved in that genre.
Right.
I've never thought of myself as like, I'm Michaelbrent, I'm a horror writer. I'm a storyteller. I like telling cool stories. And sometimes they're scary. But I also love like my kids. I'll go in and just tell them stories at night. We call them Piz stories. In the magical land of Piz, which my mom invented, she would tell us these stories, and she called it Piz because we're like, what's the name? This is little Michaelbrent. What's the name of the magical land, Mommy? And she couldn't think of anything. She literally thought, I've got Zip. And so she flipped Zip backwards, and it's Piz, children. So, I grew up with that, and now I tell my kids Piz stories, and they're like, oh, can we hear a Piz story? We want to hear what happened to the peanut butter snowman next, And yeah, the peanut butter snowman is a facially ludicrous thing, but that's one of the nice things about writing is I get to indulge my ludicrosity and my silliness and my penchant for weird things and just go, well, what if it did rain bullets? What would life be like in that situation? And
dangerous.
And just follow it to the end. Yeah, it'd be a lot more Band-Aids. So it turned into a short story.
Right. In the land of Piz when it was raining bullets. So, and I know you wrote screenplays too. So I often, have you ever read a book and as you're reading the book, you're going, this author wants it to be a TV show or a movie. It's like,
oh yeah.
I mean, it's almost like they're doing it on purpose now. Like,
for sure.
And I've seen this in like, go ahead and give me an example.
Well, I was going to say, I remember so clearly, and it was such an upsetting one because Jurassic Park, the first one, the Stephen King and Michael Crichton one came out and it kind of rocked the world. And I want to say this was like 91, 92, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And it was so good. And it was this huge success and it changed CGI and it gave us all the, meaningless, empty movies we have today. And, but it was so much fun. And then, the next book came out, and I remember reading it, and I had to stifle the urge to throw it across the room because it was so obviously written to be the next movie. The worst part of it was, I was irritated. It was kind of crass and commercial. And this was before I grew up a little, and I realized that's how you get a business being an artist is you have to think about commercial stuff,
Of course.
And there's nothing crass about it. It's just business. You can do art for yourself and not sell it, or you can do art for other people and sell it.
Right.
And so Michael Crichton did this great book. And that was the thing that bothered me so much is like, I would be less mad somehow if it wasn't so good. And then the wrap cherry on top of that poop sundae was then they made the sequel, The Lost World, which had nothing to do with the book. Like they had this book that was the most perfect screenplay I've ever read in book form. And they did nothing but ruin everything they'd set up in the first movie. I mean, it was such a dumb sequel.
Yeah. Right.
So, you see that all the time and more the IP, the intellectual property consolidates. So it's not just, hey, do you have a book? It's what movie can we make of it? Does it have action figures? Can we turn it into a comic book? And all of these different things.
That's how we ended up with the MCU.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And now everybody's like, oh, there's big money in that. But they don't recognize the MCU took freaking 50 years to get to that point. And, it's not like something that you just jump on and make $1 billion.
I will link to so the guy that is most responsible for the MCU talked for the first time forever on Tim Ferriss's podcast recently, like within the last couple months. And so like, all at once, as I finished listening to that podcast, this random comment from Martin Scorsese said, "Oh, MCU, that's not cinema," right? And I was like, okay, Mr. Scorsese, why is it not cinema? Please explain. Of course, he's not around. He just makes comments and leaves, right?
Yeah.
But I think I kind of understood, like, after listening to this podcast, what he meant.
Yeah.
Because what was going on was different than what happens in ordinary cinema.
Yeah, it's fundamentally changed a lot of movies, and not in a great way. Because again, it's like, here's the thing with Hollywood is it sees a trend, and they can only capitalize on the most automated processes. So like Saw is a great example. The movie Saw comes out, and it was this
made
huge
for nothing.
Made for nothing, huge hit, makes a lot of money, and people loved it, and Hollywood acquires it and goes, okay, let's reproduce that. And they can't reproduce the character interactions. They can't reproduce the twist necessarily. They can't reproduce the stuff that gives it its gut impact. All they can reproduce is the surface stuff, the traps. So each successively movie becomes an exercise in
thinned out.
It becomes an exercise in more and more ludicrous traps, because that's all they can do.
Right.
And similarly, Marvel sets up this huge thing, and it pays off so well in Avengers, the final 2 Avengers movies.
Right.
But Hollywood's now driving it as a money-making machine, and it's getting emptier and emptier. And even the sets, like Ant-Man, I went and saw the most recent one because I do like the movies. They're fun, but it just felt empty. And part of that is because they're not even on a set anymore. They're not even on a green screen set. They're in front of a bunch of TV, really high def monitors linked together that literally have the actors already embedded in this world, but there's no imagination happening.
Yeah.
It's just flatter, So like, I disagree. I think it's cinema. It's a different kind of cinema. And I feel like it's definitely more junk food than a full meal.
Right.
Right.
Good
it's that
popcorn
day where
movie. Right.
Yeah. Or like you pound a 5-pound family bag of Skittles because you're sad, and your stomach hurts the next day. You're like, why did I do that? But then you're sad again, and you get that 5-pound bag of Skittles. There's a place for it in life.
I'm so sad. I'm just going to sit in the couch and eat ice cream. Yes.
Yep. Watch a Marvel movie and get a tummy ache.
So yet I digress. The other thing I was going to talk about is this guy, Scott Sigler, a little bit. So he's another indie guy, and he likes to mix genres.
Yeah.
Do you do that inside of books?
Yeah, constantly.
Oh, really? Oh, good.
Yeah.
That makes
constantly
it more interesting, I think.
Yeah. Constantly. And the thing is, like, a lot of people have a real misconception when they think about genre, that what they're really thinking about is storytelling tropes, because genre is just a marketing word. Genre is just whatever shelf it's on in Barnes and Noble or Amazon. So like,
right.
And in fact, you look at the horror shelf.
You need one.
Well, you do.
You need one
because
they just need to know where to file it, basically.
And that's the thing. It's like when bookstores started, you didn't go like, I want a horror book. You walked in and said, I'd like a story that perhaps spooketh me, my good fellow. And the guy's like, oh, on yon third shelf down, there be a new one we call them novels. They're so new, by a woman named Mary Shelley. It hath monsters named Frankenstein. It doth excite greatly. But then the bookstores like took off, and this guy hires, the employees we have to do today, these upset college students who don't really like books. And the guy, so they're like getting asked, hey, where's the scary book? And they turn to the owner, where's the scary book? He's like, why did I even hire you? And so he finally just labels all the shelves, so this is the scary bookshelf. Okay, dumb new employee. It's called horror. It's the scary books or horror. And if they want like sexualized stuff, we'll call it ye olde erotica and send them over there.
Right.
And it really is. It's just marketing. It's a way of shuffling customers to the right kind of section that is more likely to be what they're interested in, without having to screw up the process with some middle person who really doesn't understand how it all works.
Right. So like the first time I thought the best sort of like, I don't know what you'd call it, maybe like a subversive overlay of genre was The Expanse.
Yeah.
Right. So each one of those novels is like, it's got a genre. I mean, it's obviously sci-fi. we know where to put this book on the shelf. But
Absolutely.
Within that, right, book one is noir.
Yeah.
and it's great.
So fun.
And it's great. I totally missed the noir and all the other books because the other books are not noir. And turns out I kind of like that. It was a really cool mix, you know?
Yeah, it totally is. Or like, you know, one of the big fan favorites of all time is Firefly, which is a Western.
Totally love that. Yes.
It's cowboys and Indians in space.
Right. It's Wagon Train in Space.
Yeah.
Which was
and
the original
I say cowboys
pitch.
and Indians, by the way, as a cultural relic, not as a, I'm not saying anything bad. Okay. That's what they used to call them.
Yeah. You say horses and guns and everybody knows what you're saying. Yeah. And you're not offending.
Chaps and spurs.
There you go. But I just saw this Star Trek retrospective documentary, and the original Star Trek was pitched as Wagon Train in Space.
Yeah.
Same deal, you know?
Yeah. And actually, that's one of the things I really like about there's different kinds of Star Treks. One of the things I love the most about Wrath of Khan, which is, you know, held up as one of the best ones. It's a submarine movie. It's the hunt for Red October in space. You know, it is. It's like
it is. Yes, because they're in the nebula. That's right.
Yeah, these two submarines circling each other, and I mean, it's so cool when people know how to overlay that really well. Yeah. 100%. 100%. One ping,
Mr. Whatever your name is.
So, there are some things in this boat that don't react well to bullets. Yeah, I love that movie. That's such a good movie. And it is. It's so much
Sean
fun.
Connery.
Dude, Sean Connery is the most eminently, not make fun of bull. You're doing an homage even when you suck at it. You're it's because he's got such a good voice.
Exactly. I try to avoid doing voices at all, but I can't help myself from doing one ping.
Right? 100%. It's a part of my soul. It's a part of my soul. So yeah, overlaying genres makes it more fun. And I like playing with that all the time because look, if your only point is I'm going to write a book and it's 400 pages of just being scared, that's like a roller coaster that just goes up and then goes down for the whole time. It's just
totally.
Yeah.
And
so you got to throw in the twists and the loops, and sometimes there's a surprise romance or
something funny.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much humor in horror. Horror and humor are the two most closely related genres.
Right.
The only thing that separates them is lighting and lens length. I mean, it's if you're close up in the dark, you're associating and it's scary. If you're far away and it's light, it's the other guy it's happening to, and it's hilarious.
Interesting.
But beyond that, the same
Got
stuff happens,
Right.
So yeah, putting those things in is a lot of fun, and it's very freeing too to just be I'm going to call it a horror novel because I have to put it on a shelf somewhere, and my books sell best on the horror shelf. But yeah, you could get anything. In fact, one person they emailed me, a fan, very recently, and were just 3 lines, and it was just or 3 words. It was just, name is dead. And I was oh, they just got up to book 5 of The Colony, where I just completely changed the whole set of rules that I've been playing with.
Okay.
And I'm you thought you were in a zombie book. Guess what? We're doing something different now.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah, it's super fun,
Yeah.
And it's not fun where you feel the authors just can't figure out what they're doing. It's tremendously fun where the author's got you we're in a science fiction movie. We're in a science fiction movie. We're in a bam, horror movie. Just kidding. And it's been there the whole time. You just didn't notice.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
It is.
I think the most fun movie wise was Dusk Till Dawn, the first one. Because most of that movie is just the bad guy buddy movie.
Yeah.
Right up until that chick turns into a vampire. And you're what the hell?
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because I hold that up with another one that's very similar, which as far as that kind of structure, which is Predator, the original one with Schwarzenegger.
Right.
Because it's oh, it's going to be a Schwarzenegger movie. There's crap one-liners. There's a lot of blood. We're in the jungle.
And you get a lot of that. You do get a lot of that.
Yeah,
I don't have time to
all
bleed.
Of a sudden, it's the most manly, and it has the most macho, high five moment in history.
Yes.
Apollo
Creed.
Him and Carl Weathers. Yeah, dude. If Mr. T and Chuck Norris had been in the background, the universe would have exploded.
True.
And so it's super cool. All of a sudden, then it's this alien movie. And I talk about those two a lot because I'm I think Dusk Till Dawn would have made way more money if they had done the one thing Predator did better, unabashedly and perfectly, which is, again, you got to feel it's not just totally out of left field. So Predator has one single shot in the very beginning of a spaceship going towards Earth. And
I
it's
remember
so
that.
quick,
Yep.
but almost nobody does until I say it. As soon as I say it, they're like, oh yeah. And it sets up in your head. So when the alien shows up, you're like, this is perfect. This is what we were leading up to.
Right.
Whereas Dusk Till Dawn, there's no indication.
None. Right.
And like, if you went to the bathroom at the wrong time, you would literally think you wandered into the wrong theater.
True. Yes.
Yeah. You're like, whoa, I didn't know Salma Hayek did 2 movies this year. This one's really weird.
And so we're getting ready to wrap up. So I don't want to forget. I want to mention one more thing. But before we do that, let's talk about how people can best get in touch with let me see if I can get this right. MBC. There we go. I always want to say Mick B.
I know. My parents, they're like, who named you? I'm like, my parents hated me, obviously.
Yeah.
So the easiest way to find me is to just write my first name. My first name is Michaelbrent.
There's only one
word.
Right.
It's just me. And by the way, I don't have a gold stick up my butt. Just there's like 1,000 Michaels in my family. So this way I know who's actually yelling at me at the family reunion.
Michaelbrent. Yes.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. Who did this? Michaelbrent. So they can just type in Michaelbrent, or they can go to bestsellerlife.com, and that's where I've got all my courses and stuff. So I'm super easy to Google. And if you Google me just right, maybe I'll Google you back. See, I made it creepy because I'm a horror writer.
Creepy and funny. So, so what I wanted to say is I hate it in a movie when they take that hard left with no advance warning and no, I love them, right? And so, okay, let's listen to the last chime here. Okay, here we go. It's noon. Okay, so maybe I'll edit that. Maybe I won't. It's all good.
Cinema Veritas.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember like a really good example, but there are several. You're just watching the movie and it takes that hard left, and they gave you 0 hints.
Yeah,
I think that
cool.
It's just cheating. I don't, it's not fun. It's like I want to quit now. Yeah.
Yeah. No, 100%. And you know who's the queen of that was Agatha Christie, because like they'd have all the murderer, all the suspects arrayed, and Inspector Belgium guy, I forget his name all of a sudden, but Hercule Poirot, he gets in, he's like, we have all of you, and the murder was perfect, but for one thing. And he's like, what none of you know is I sent away for DNA testing on a piece of fabric that I found but never mentioned earlier in the movie. But I sent away, and now I know exactly who the murderer is because the result is here. And it's like, what? That's cheating. You gotta give us all the clues, because if you just bring in a new clue at the last second, that's the writer or the director or whoever saying like, I don't have enough confidence to believe in my mystery, really.
Right.
And it's delightful to show somebody the last clue and they get it after the main character, or like, someone finally says it and they go back and they go, oh crap, how did I miss all of that?
Right.
That's like,
that's satisfying.
Perfect spot.
That's what the thing 100%. That makes you want to go back and watch it again immediately. That's what you want.
I'm going to fact check. Yeah. I'm going to error check the author right now.
Yeah.
It's super cool to do that. You can actually be too clever with it. Like one time in one of my early books, I wrote something like Oklahoma Territory 1872. And I got all these angry emails like, you didn't do research. Oklahoma was already a state in 1872. And I was saying, well, actually, that's my way of saying this isn't really Oklahoma. I was laying it in early that this is kind of an alternate situation, but I was too subtle about it. And that's the other danger, is like you do lay it all out, but they still feel ripped off because you didn't give it to them properly. It's such a careful tease to be involved in.
Interesting. So you have to be careful with your alternative reality facts.
Oh, for sure. There is, for sure. There is. I am so smart. Everyone thinks I'm a moron. Like there's people who are just that smart. I'm not one of them. People are like, how are you so smart? I'm like, I'm not that smart. You read in 10 hours what I spent 6 months crafting. I hope I am 6 months smarter than your 10 hours.
Right. Well, let's wrap this shit up before we spend all day here. Yes. Michaelbrent, this has been a blast.
You've been great.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't handle another second of you. It's all good. I took it in the spirit it was intended, I think, anyway.
Oh, thank goodness.
I think. Unless you are an asshole.
No, I don't want to make you mad. You could be a hitman. I don't know.
That's right. I could be a school teacher.
That's right.
All right, brother. This has been a blast. If you ever want to come back and pitch a new book, please do. You have co-host vibe, so
nice.
Come back as often as you like, and we'll just be
that's
us.
so sweet. I love it. This was super fun. I super like the conversations that we get to have and in this business, and this has been just a delightful one. So thank you so much.
All right, brother. Have a good one.
Take care.
Yep.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.